Hello, podcast listeners, and welcome to the Core Health Collective show. My name is Ben Bowen, and on this podcast, we will be exploring what it means to be an entrepreneur in the health and wellness industry. We will explore the many opportunities and challenges we go through to improve the human condition with the products and services we sell. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Core Health Collective show. On today's episode, I'm super excited to hear that we have Brad Way on the show. As we will continue to unpack the many opportunities and challenges for business owners, entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space. So Brad comes to us from more of the office side of the health and wellness spectrum. We can't forget the fact that we spend so many waking hours at work or in the office or remote. And, we have to really make sure that we focus on our wellness at work as well. And who better to do that than the leaders of the companies that everyone works for? So Brad has dedicated this portion of his career to helping those leaders really engage their employees to make sure that they have healthy work environments. So Brad, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ben. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So just for context for everybody, you're involved in two companies right now. Why don't you just give a little bit of background on company 1 and 2 and kind of the timeline and how you got and why you decided to get involved?
Yeah, that's okay. Thanks. So I started off in the consulting space about 18 years ago now. It blows my mind that it's been that a length of time. And
you look much younger than that. You must start when you were 10.
Okay, thank you. It's interesting how that over time actually plays to your advantage versus when you're younger and you think someone makes that comment and you're like, I don't want to be older. I own a company called FlexBen, and we've been in the wellness consulting space, specifically with employee benefits, group retirement savings programs, and workplace wellness. About 5 or 6 years ago, I started to lean more into the workplace wellness conversation, and it was an itch that I wanted to scratch. And that led me to start a secondary company recently called Inside Out. And we're a leadership development company helping organizations create cultures and awesome places of work. And so, that's where I am right now.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I love the work you're doing. You know this. We've spoken before. I'm lucky enough to sit in on a roundtable that you put together. Is that tomorrow or Friday?
That is tomorrow. There will be an email reminder going out tomorrow. Yeah, and that's another project with a mutual friend of ours, Matt Hawksley, that we're excited to kind of get underway.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it. I love the space you're working in. I feel deeply passionate about it. I have my own story of why that is. As a quick explanation, I ran a fairly big sales organization, and our largest partner was a Fortune 500 company. And I saw the corporate culture flow down from them to us. And over the years, it wasn't as positive as I would have liked. It didn't fit my standards for employee wellness. And I certainly made my own mistakes over those years. But after I sold that company, after 10 years, one of the things I said I'd never do again is to let somebody degrade the corporate culture that is so important to me. So when I found out about all the work you're doing, obviously I was very excited to chat with you.
Right.
So let's, just for the audience, let's talk about how do you define the gap? Like where are people at with their workplace wellness now? And what's the gap to getting to where you think they should be?
Right. Well, and that's a great question, and it's a little hard to quantify at times, but I was looking at some stats as I was preparing for our chat today, and certainly things that are top of mind with the work that I do is, 66% of our workforce is disengaged. And there's various reasons for that, but mental health is one of the primary reasons for that. 70% of disability claims are a result of mental health. And the important thing I think to keep in mind is that while mental health is a very important topic, we're really actually talking about employee well-being and its comprehensive, nature of it. And so I think it's very important for leadership to consider that. For so long, I think leadership was always of the mindset that, you keep your, mental health or personal challenges at home and they don't come into the office. And that's just not possible. I heard a great story yesterday, actually, at a roundtable discussion that I was a part of, or as an audience member. And a great example was given of somebody that was showing up to work not as themselves for a continuous basis. It was the summertime. And a simple conversation led to finding out that a air conditioner was broken in the household and he wasn't sleeping at all. And so for the simple, process or purchase of an air conditioner, now they had their full-time employee back fully engaged. So it just goes to show you that, well-being in context is the most important thing. And as leaders, we have a vital role to play.
Yeah. Well, it's our opportunity, right, as leaders to achieve the goals for the company that we set out. And I don't think anybody sets goals for their company thinking, this is a goal that will get achieved even with my employees, 66% of them not engaged in the work at all.
Right.
I think they make these goals assuming everybody is on board and everybody will be contributing to the best of their ability, which is not the case. So as leaders, we have to recognize that and put some action in play to solve for that problem, that constraint.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I think you were speaking to it even earlier with your personal experience, share about working with a Fortune 500 company. And, we can, I think about the total aspect of an individual and of an organization, and purpose is such a vital aspect of an organization's well-being, and therefore vital to an individual's as well. And you can make a big difference consciously if you go into making decisions with purpose in mind and your core values and culture when making business decisions, whether that's relationships with vendors or clients, and certainly when hiring or unhiring team members.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you think the utopian situation for a leader is? Like what is a leader looking for in their team to know and trust that the goals of the organization can easily be met? Has that been defined by anybody yet? Or are we still trying to, decrease that 66% number?
Well, I mean, can you try asking me that question again?
Yeah. I think it's fair. I think I got caught up in trying to ask it. I think that, so what I'm confused about is, what does a great environment look like?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think a great environment is an environment in which people like and love where they work, why they work, and who they work with. And so there's means in order to come to those conclusions as leaders. Obviously, having some kind of measurement tool in order to facilitate those challenging concepts. Right. And so defining what your core values are as an organization and the behaviors behind what those things are vital. Having that core purpose or mission and why. Simon Sinek is a big, virtual mentor at a distance for me. And certainly as I was going through my own evolution of fulfillment a handful of years ago with my own career, finding out my why was vital. And as a business leader, owner of an organization, communicating that is imperative to creating an environment and a team that is pulling in the same direction and can help you achieve all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when we think about our employees, I guess at some of these roundtables that you're a part of and the research that you do, customers you work with, what are some of the top challenges that these business owners are having with, kind of transforming their organization to, empowering the employee and focusing on their mental health?
Right. Well, I mean, I've said it a few times already, is a lot of them don't have a defined why they're doing what they're doing. Not a what, but at the what's really motivating the leader and the team to actually achieve what they're trying to achieve. Another thing is core values. We ask leaders, organizations, employees all the time if they have values, and they say yes. And I ask them, how many can you name? And in most circumstances, they can name but one of four if they don't have a list of 7 somewhere in a book, but nobody knows what they are. Yeah. And the other challenge around values is that they don't have defined descriptions or stories behind why those values are so important to the organization. And so just doing those simple things can make a big difference in an organization. Communication, and then obviously leadership. I think leadership is such a vital aspect of the whole thing, because leaders have an opportunity to obviously set the stage, set the tone of an organization, and it's them that's going to make all the difference. I think I got lost in my train of thought there, so I apologize.
Yeah. No, you bring up a good point. So, like, what does an organization do in this scenario? I always wonder, because I hear this a lot from clients we work with, that, they may have employees that do a good job. So they complete the job description. But, they're not like rah for the company. They're not identifying with the core values or the vision or the goals, but they come in, they do a good job, and they leave. They're not looking to make friends. I had an HR friend of mine years ago say, just manage to the performance. But now we're seeing like a contradiction in that type of thinking, that people that aren't happy or don't align with the vision or the values can't do their best work, or it's just a matter of time till they leave. Like, how do you unpack that situation? Again, somebody that's doing a good job but doesn't really care about any of the other stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a big opportunity for an organization and the individual, quite frankly, regardless of what the outcome is. And what I mean by that is that person that doesn't fit the culture probably isn't having a good time either. Okay. And we talk about it often, and I think about the many teams that I've been on. There's teams that I want to be on, and there's teams that I don't want to be on, whether that's, a sports league or volunteering or vice versa. And when I don't want to be on there, it's because either I don't fit with the culture that's, either defined or just happening, or there's somebody else on that team that is in complete conflict with my own values. And as leaders, we have the opportunity to actually intentionally measure those things. And, it's very easy, I think, for organizations, and has been, just as you mentioned, kind of the way of business is that we measure, KPIs. We measure performance as predefined activities that employees or team members need to be doing in order to be successful. But we don't measure very well. And that's what we like to introduce is meeting or the behaviors that make our company so successful, like we have talked about already, is that a lot of organizations may have values, but they don't have descriptions of why those values are important to the organization through story, or just in terms of further description of what integrity means to the organization, which is not a great value, by the way, because it's so subjective of what integrity truly means unless you have descriptive behaviors.
Yeah. Company makes lots of money without stealing. Is that integrity? Right? Subjective.
Well, exactly. Yeah, it's subjective. Integrity is living up to your own values. So what are your values?
Yeah, that's a good point. How does someone uncover some of these things before they hire somebody?
You mean before they hire a staff person?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what some of the work that we do, and I would encourage anybody to do, is the best thing to do is to identify team members that you'd like to clone.
Okay.
Everybody has somebody probably on their organization that they would love to duplicate. And if they don't, then maybe that's the first thing that they need to think about is how do we get more people in here that we would like to duplicate? And defining what your core values are, those descriptive behaviors, and the stories behind what make your organization great can really inform a hiring process. And so from those core values and stories, you can ask scenario-based questions that now you already have a perfect template for what a great answer would be, because you've already identified what those stories are based on actual people in your organization that you'd like to duplicate.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that help? So, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I like that cloning feeling. We were talking just before we hit record about, VR capability and all the technology that's coming. Maybe your third company should be cloning, employee cloning.
Well, I think that's kind of the idea, is to help organizations clone their best employees. That's the work that we do at Inside Out.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Hopefully we can do it with technology one day. Then you can clone me and I can go home.
And that's not to say that everybody has to be the same, but when we're talking about culture and creating an environment where people can be at their best, we do want to duplicate and have alignment on core values.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're hiring people, because your FlexBend company works a lot on the compensation side of staffing, right? It's a component to the compensation.
Yeah. So, we help organizations with employee benefits and some of the wellness aspects, like financially, group retirement savings programs, things like that. But yeah.
What do employees want now? Like 2024?
Yeah, that's great.
Without being cliche and saying, employees want everything as much as they can get. What do they want? Like, what are the things in a compensation package, and maybe a design of where and when they work, how they work? Like, what are the low hanging fruit that leaders can hear this podcast and say, here's a few things that I can put into place without thinking I have to figure out how to give my employees everything?
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to like this answer because it might be a little abstract. But are you familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
No.
Okay. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a psychological assessment or tool, basically, that you can use in terms of what we need as individuals. And Maslow you can do a Google search and it'll talk all about that.
Okay.
In terms of security and, food, and obviously just a hierarchy of getting to a point that maybe it's less food requirements or shelter, but becomes more purpose-based or aspirational type things. Those things can be introduced from a business perspective, right? So all employees are looking for some kind of security. So that's kind of the base level. They want some kind of certainty. They want psychological safety. They want to be able to say, hey, Ben, I think we should maybe consider this, and not be afraid that Ben is going to, ostracize them or criticize them for speaking up. Okay. That's probably the biggest thing. So, and that's also then that includes, some general health resources and tools like insurance or benefits, right? So that they can take care of, prescription drugs or mental health or dental, those types of things. The other aspect would be employees really love to be recognized. They want to feel significant. And so leadership in a company can go a long way by simply introducing some kind of system that recognizes team members internally, but also externally to a wider audience. We have tools like Facebook or social media that we can definitely shout out our employees for things that they're doing great within the organization. And I wouldn't focus on just the standard KPIs. I would think about the behaviors that they're demonstrating and set you apart as a business. Like caring or giving back or whatever those values are that you define as your organization's core values. And then the last thing we talked about earlier was purpose. People want to have some form of meaning. And that's really important for an organization to identify and then communicate to team members, and certainly when they're hiring, to make sure that everybody's aligned and on board with the task at hand.
Okay. So that all makes sense. It's obviously a leader has to put some focus into that and be intentional about building all of that up for employee. None of it sounds impossible. There's great people like you that you can talk to for that middle piece, which is the benefits and health and prescription drugs, and make sure that they've got good eyeglasses so they can see the monitor, or depending on their job.
And I would say, Ben, I would ask your teams what their needs are.
Yeah.
Right. What do they need in order to be successful? What are they trying to achieve in their professional life? Sit down with them, have those conversations. It may be that you are a stepping stone to another opportunity in their career. And I think leaders can play a big role in retaining staff by embracing that fact. We're all on a journey. I'm certainly not doing the same thing in the exact same way as I was early on. I think I added a lot of value to any organization I was at previously. I know that if a leader put me in a position where I felt like I couldn't continue to grow, which is one of the elements that are all of our employees and individually we're looking for, is opportunities to grow. If we stifle that as business leaders, then we run the risk that people are going to become disengaged. You want to fully engage your team while they're there. And one of the ways to do that is help them to get to where they want to go. So ask them.
Yeah, no, I like that. So just listening to you walk through this, it's really great. It speaks to my heart for sure, and to my business. I want to put you on the hot seat for 2 questions.
Okay, let's go.
So you've been on the hot seat the whole time, but now that's really hot. We're going to turn it up. So the first is, because I actually heard this last week. So when you were talking about using social media to share with the world how great your team members are, as an opportunity to give them recognition outside of your organization, I heard someone say last week in a meeting that I was in, helping doing for some interview panel for a charity that I volunteer with. They said, I don't want to share our people online because I'm scared they're going to get poached by other companies. What would you say to a leader that had that rebuttal to your kind of formula on how to build a good package for an employee?
Well, I think that I would wonder why they would want to leave if you've created the environment that they would want to stay. Yeah.
Okay. Great. I love it. Simple. Second question, a little more nuanced maybe, based on the last thing that you said prior to the first question, is what would you say to a leader that's struggling to manage the employee, and unfortunately they're often younger employees that identified that they want to move up in a company, because you were talking about that, which is totally fine. And we need to make sure that we understand where their career, show them the path. But younger employees that seem to want to shortcut or shorten that career path, the timeline on it, like drastically. So, if we're thinking, if you do a good job for a couple of years, you can move into this role. And they're thinking like, I've been really good for 4 months. Why am I not getting that role? So what would you say to a leader that's struggling to manage the timeline on the career path for their employees?
That's a good question. I have a 20-year-old. So I know the whole expectations that I have are different than what his expectations are at this point in his life. One of the things I really encourage business leaders and individuals, quite frankly, is to get away from expectations and have those hard conversations and come up with agreements. So replace expectations with agreements. I think that in some cases, Ben, obviously there's a learning curve for our youth. I know I was one at one point. And so it's just a part, I think, of the process. And, I think as leaders, that when we set, clear expectations, clear agreements, then that can go a long way in terms of the employee understanding what their next steps are. So I think it's just that uncomfortable conversation that's necessary, and replace expectations with agreements.
I love that. That is the tagline from this whole episode, for sure. Replace expectations with agreements. So what you mean is, instead of having someone have an expectation on their next job within the organization or their career path without maybe really respecting the proposed timeline, just have an agreement that, like, if you do this well for this amount of time, this is what I'll do for you. Obviously,
sure.
If possible.
I said this is important, both business, so professionally and personally. I know that from a personal perspective, the biggest challenges I have in my life with my kids or my wife is that I expect, or I have this predefined expectation in my own mind that I haven't had a one-on-one conversation with her about, or my two children about, where we've actually sat down and said, well, if this happens, we'll do this. And that often leads into some, obviously, miscommunication and then some frustration down the road. And I think that applies within any relationship. So you can apply it within your business.
Yeah, communication always comes back to communication. I just like the way that you put it, which is why I said it again. And we're going to put it in the show notes. That quote, it's yours. Copyright it. Put it on a t-shirt and a hat. I like that. A lot. So this was a really great conversation, and this is not our first on this topic, and I already know it won't be our last because we're chatting tomorrow morning. But I think we have not done an episode like this yet, talking about this specific topic. So you are now I think we're like 50 episodes in, and you're the de facto work health expert for the Core Health Collective. So we will probably bring you back at some point if you're okay with that.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, Ben, one of my biggest drivers is to help individuals in business not only become self-aware, but self-actualize and become the best versions of themselves. And, having the opportunity to come here and share part of that message has been, I'm very grateful for it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for coming. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Thank you for not only joining us today on the Core Health Collective show, but also thank you for being an entrepreneur looking to make the world a better place.